What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Michael and welcome to FudgeMuppet. Today I wanted to make a video answering the questions we've been getting relating to builds, specifically Fallout 76 builds, and if we're going to make them. Now, for all of those wondering, yes, we're gonna get back to making some Fallout and some Skyrim builds, so don't you worry about that. That is the good news. And we're gonna keep making videos on Elder Scrolls and Fallout lore, and of course some Witcher lore here and there too. And we also want to make a whole lot of creative content relating to the idea of ideal game worlds, videos about what we'd want in a good Elder Scrolls or Fallout game. You might have seen that we've done piece videos like the Elder Scrolls 6 Valenwood, the ideal Fallout New Orleans, and so on. We've actually got a massive video coming called What Fallout 76 Should Have Been, the ideal Fallout 76, which involves us explaining where Fallout 76 went wrong and how we'd fix it, creating a co-op game with really well fleshed out RPG elements and a super complex world filled with living factions that we explain in detail. What we won't be making, however, at least for the foreseeable future, are Fallout 76 builds, and we've got some solid reasoning as to why. If you do want us to cover perk cards and which ones to use and how, let me know, but for the moment we are having more fun looking at the lore and the build potential of previous Fallout games, even New Vegas and the Elder Scrolls. Now, if Bethesda somehow addresses the concerns I'm going to cover in this video, then we could make builds, but it seems that the flaws for making character builds are foundational in the design of the game itself, so we can't really count on it. So here's why we're not too keen on Fallout 76 builds. Fallout 76 isn't really a game that facilitates role-playing a certain character. That is the foundational problem with creating FudgeMuppet style builds, ones with fleshed out backstories and cool ways to roleplay them in a large world that you can actually influence and react certain ways to. So in Fallout 76 you start out in the vault, and the only thing you can do as far as make your character unique is change your appearance. This doesn't set your character appearance in stone, however, as you can just change your character later whenever you want, even your gender, and just switch from a fat old man with a beard to a young skinny blonde woman on the fly. There's not even a rationalization for it like a plastic surgeon in Fallout 4, or in this case, a game with no living NPCs. They didn't even make you go to an advanced medical robot of sorts or anything like that. You just open the menu and you can change who you are whenever you want. While this is just on the aesthetic level, this same concept actually seeps into your character statistically too, which is a big problem. One way that can be seen is in the form of perk cards, but more on that soon. Let's get back to your starting character. So my emphasis with being able to change your character is not on the aesthetic, but I use the example to show you how a character is framed in Fallout 76. There is no strong sense of character. You begin as a blob, a moldable changing blob that struggles to distinguish itself from other player characters in the game. We see this statistically through the special stat system Bethesda implemented. So if you've been watching FudgeMuppet, you'll know that we love to min-max characters. We love to create builds like a brute that starts off with high strength and low intelligence, or a stealthy sniper who enters the wasteland with high agility, good stealth capabilities, but a fragile health bar in the form of low endurance. Being able to have varying levels of strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, and luck distinguishes a character at the beginning of the game. It makes your build feel unique straight out of the gate, and often can be fitted to a backstory about what kind of person the character build is. What attributes do they have? Were they always intellectually gifted? Did something crazy happen to them that could only be explained by sheer unbelievable luck? Special stat choice sets characters apart both statistically and in role-playing, but in Fallout 76 you start with one in every single special stat. Now personally, I liked how things were done in Fallout New Vegas, so you have 5 in every special stat and then 5 special stat points to allocate, but with the ability to remove points from stats and add to others. So you could keep everything at 5, set strength to 10, and then pull intelligence down to 1 in order to push endurance up to 9. In this example, we could start with a powerful melee character who obviously would be greatly challenged when it came to intellectual tasks, but you still smash skulls at level 1 because that's what this character has always been good at. This makes a playthrough really fun and distinct, and you can have a backstory about how you were born as this genetically muscled freak who had to work as a henchman for a post-apocalyptic crime lord because his brain obviously couldn't be used to make his money. Similarly to Fallout 76, Fallout 4 has you start with 1 in every special stat. However, they give you 21 special points to allocate, still allowing you to make a set character from the beginning. Now, Fallout 76 gives you no special stats to allocate. Instead, you get 1 special stat point to allocate every time you level up, meaning that your character can't really enter the wasteland wasteland with any kind of predefined attributes, abilities, or specialization. They have to be bland, even though they're meant to be America's best and brightest. So if you wanted to roleplay being a highly talented engineer who was taken to the vault, even statistically, your roleplaying doesn't quite work out because you'll have 1 intelligence like everyone else. As expected, traits don't feature in Fallout 76 either. For those who don't know, traits were perk-like bonuses you could pick for your character at the start of the game that had advantages and drawbacks and acted as another device to make your playthrough and your build feel more unique in Fallout New Vegas. They weren't in Fallout 4 though, but man, they would be so easy to add to a game like Fallout 76, and at least then you'd feel somewhat different to other characters in the game. For example, imagine a trait called Tunnel Vision, which greatly increases your accuracy in VATS, but heavily reduces the distance at which enemies can be seen as red dots on your compass. It would make your build feel unique. Mutations are a feature added to Fallout 76 that are kind of like traits though, but they're temporary, and even if you do use the methods to keep them, they don't really define your character. They're lots of fun and definitely add to the gameplay, but having the jump height to leap onto sheds via the marsupial mutation, for example, doesn't really add to the role-playing. Ironically, Fallout 76 was sold as this multiplayer game where you could work in teams with your friends, but if you play the game with friends, you all enter the wasteland as blank slates who can't actually have any team roles. Everyone would play the same way for a long time, using whatever guns and ammo they found, likely having melee weapons as a backup or vice versa, not really being too sturdy or too weak, everyone collecting junk and not being able to have set roles to create synergy and therefore incentivize playing the game as a team from the start. So this obviously reduces role-playing in the most literal sense. You don't really feel statistically distinct until about level 15 or 20, and personally I think this is way too late for a character to feel somewhat defined. So let's just say that you've gotten past the initial blob stage and you've built a character with certain special stats and specific perk cards. What's the issue here when it comes to making builds? Well, apart from already being halfway through the main story before you can start feeling defined, and obviously there's no choices for you to make in the story either, the leveling system itself has some flaws for making builds. So when we make builds, we like to be able to tell you what perks to get and when. Perk cards in Fallout 76, however, are random. You just randomly open up packs of perk cards and you don't really know what ones you're going to get. You can also just slot in perk cards as you feel like it, situationally. So I could just pick perk cards that make chems more effective, not use them, and then just hold on to them until I want to use chems, and then slot them in temporarily. It almost makes perks become like items that you can just equip whenever you need them, instead of permanent bonuses that define who you are. I do see what Bethesda was going for here. It is exciting to wonder what perk cards you might receive the next time you level up, and they thought it would be a good idea to not make you commit to a character by making permanent decisions, but unfortunately it makes having a build really difficult, because you might just not get the right perk card for your build until later. It's also a sacrifice which makes the game less fun, at least for me, as it further reduces role-playing by allowing your character to shapeshift in and out of different roles. With random perk cards too, you can't really plan out your character like you could in previous Fallout games, where you could see all the possible perks from the start. It kind of goes with their whole idea of giving everyone one in every special stat from the beginning. There's no planning or commitment to a character. You kind of just start playing and wing it as you go along. It feels very casual, which is probably what they were going for. However, this makes builds very challenging, as if I'm telling you how to make a build, there will probably be perk cards that I'm using which you might not have found. I could suggest certain loadouts, and if you do want videos like that, I would be curious for you to let me know, but generally speaking, character building is not only difficult, but it's also not incentivized, as you can switch around your perks as you please. There's also perks which are just like skills. So in Fallout New Vegas, perks were more unique, and then there were skills which were separate to perks, which you also increased as you leveled. Skills affected more boring things, like the gun skill increases gun damage and the medicine skill changes how useful stim packs are. Perks were therefore left to be really unique, such as the Tribal Wisdom perk, which meant you took 50% less limb damage from animals, and mutated insects. You got plus 25% poison resistance, and the ability to eat mutated insects in sneak mode. Very unique, making you feel like a true tribal. But in Fallout 4, skills were added into perks, in the form of perks like Rifleman and Gunslinger, which you just selected ranks of to increase basic damage. Fallout 76 has this problem too, with loads of perk cards that just influence basic things like damage. This is just a general critique, however, and the positive side with perk cards cards is that there are so many of them in Fallout 76. Technically, it seems there are more unique perks in 76 than in Fallout 4, and some are awesome, but overall, a huge bulk of them are still bland, and ranks make them annoying too. For example, using perk choices on things like Rifleman, just increasing gun damage over and over again, instead of picking unique stuff, and then if that wasn't enough, they add in perk cards with Expert in front of them, so Expert Rifleman, which is just the same thing with even more ranks done over again and again, to just up your damage more and more as you level. It's just a waste of perk points that could be spent on really cool things, but cool perks do exist, like the Goat Legs perk card, which reduces fall damage. Again, it's a grind though, because you have to find it more than once to unlock all its ranks. It would be much more fun if it didn't have ranks and was more potent, reducing fall damage by 80% instantly. Again, there would still be the problem of being able to just equip the card whenever you want to just jump off a cliff, and then unequip it when you're at the bottom, slotting back in whatever perk cards you normally use. The perk card system is very convenient, but for me, it makes character builds feel cheap. So I guess the reason we can't have Fallout 76 character builds is because you don't really have a properly fleshed out build, do you? You have a current perk card setup. Perk cards are cool because there's lots of them and many are unique, but being able to switch them in and out and having them be random, I've found, really damages character creation in the leveling system. Plus, because perk cards don't have special stat requirements, some of the incentive to have diverse special stats goes down, and it becomes better to be more all-rounded. So again, even if you're playing in teams at later levels, you often end up with a bunch of people who are all-rounders, and everyone has different perk card setups. They can all slot in and play whatever role they want to. So no one really needs a big team with different roles in this game, because people can assume whatever role they want. So in previous Fallout games, perks had stat requirements. Let's use Fallout 4 for example. Unless you had 10 strength, you could not use the Pain Train perk, and this made having 10 strength exciting, not just from a stat perspective involving melee damage and carry weight, but due to the idea of having an otherwise unobtainable game-changing ability. In Fallout 76, however, your special stat levels restrict how many perk cards and ranks within those cards you can use, but it doesn't restrict the perk card choices themselves. So even if you only had 3 in strength, you could slot in one perk card with all 3 ranks unlocked of some super powerful strength perk card, and then when you're no longer needing that, just switch out to whatever baseline strength perk cards you use, like bland options to reduce the carry weight of specific things like chems. That's actually an example of where perk cards have been made niche, but they haven't necessarily been made interesting, like having perk cards to reduce chem weight, then another perk card for reducing ammo weight or gun weight, and so on. You can see what I'm saying here. Again, there are some really cool concepts, like having a perk card that gives you healing during the rain, but like I said, this is cheapened by the fact that I can just get that perk card and then slot it in whenever it starts raining. It's not a defining aspect of who my character build is, but rather this bonus that I carry around with me to use when I want to. Overall, it seems like the leveling system has been created to be super accessible and let anyone do anything, so you don't have to think super hard about decisions. But ultimately, I think this actually does way more damage than good, and could easily have been fixed by just making a respec option somewhere in the game. If you could use a special auto dock machine later in the game to respec your character at a decent cost, it would let people fix any mistakes they made in the process of creating their build, and it would therefore make room for a different leveling system that can be permanent and does strongly define your character as you level up and make build choices. So as you can see, a lot of the RPG elements have been gutted from the leveling system, which makes Fallout 76 builds way harder to create and of less value because they're mostly reduced to temporary perk card loadouts. So originally, I thought that builds would be possible because they'd be carried by the statistical side of role-playing, but you can see the problem here with doing builds like that. Now with pure role-playing, not from a statistical perspective, we always knew this would probably be an issue. The general sense of role-playing we'd give to a character through a deep backstory, telling you how they'd act and what factions they'd side with, simply can't be pulled off like a previous Fallout game. Even in Fallout 4, where role-playing and choice in the game was reduced a lot compared to previous Fallout titles, we still managed to pull off solid role-playing builds. You're always the same character looking for their son, and you had to have that same framing of being in the military if you were a male, or having practiced law if you were a female, so the backstories had stricter parameters, but they were still possible, and in the Wasteland you could still rationalize playing different characters and actually choose a path to follow. You could be a secret agent assassin, or a chem-fueled raider, or a Minutemen general or an institute scientist. Fallout 4 had many faults with role-playing, but compared to Fallout 76, it has way more role-playing potential. In Fallout 76, there's no dialogue in the game, so you can't actually choose speech options for your character to define any kind of role-playing. And you may say, well, you can still use your actual microphone to roleplay with your friends, but it's like saying you could roleplay in COD. Yes, I could roleplay as the squad leader of my friends and shout over the microphone in a military-style tone and instruct them what to do, but that game wasn't built to facilitate role-playing, and Fallout 76 doesn't really either. So besides no dialogue, there aren't really choices for you to really make in the game. You just follow objectives from dead people and robots, unable to really influence the world around you. You join every single faction pretty much pretending to actually, as all the members are dead, so outside of what you can equip for your character, weapons and armor wise, and what perk card loadout you're temporarily choosing, there aren't really mechanics in the game to facilitate actual role-playing builds that we love to make for other Bethesda games. There's more role-playing potential in more action-oriented RPGs that have defined main characters like Deus Ex and Mass Effect than there is in Fallout 76. But do remember, we want to make some more role-playing builds for the other Fallout games and of course Elder Scrolls. So besides the statistical side of builds being messy, the raw role-playing elements are too, as there's no impact you can choose to make on the world, and having choice is foundational to a good role-playing build. Even if you could choose to join certain factions and avoid others, there's no living people in these factions for them to then have meaningful impact in theoretical storylines within them. So without choices for you to make and quests just having you follow objectives and no dialogue and no living factions and a very disorganized, non-committal leveling system, I hope you can see why making Fallout 76 builds won't be happening unless somehow Bethesda makes some miracle changes to their game, which I don't think they're going to. So if you have been keeping up with the channel, you would have noticed we've done a few Fallout 76 guides, and you might see some more Fallout 76 content on the channel. Actually, with the ideal Fallout 76 video coming, you definitely will. Maybe we'll make videos on perk cards or mutations or more guides, who can really say right now, but at the current moment, we're finding it a lot more enjoyable focusing on the more creative content regarding previous Fallout games and the Elder Scrolls series, and also all of the ideal game worlds we can come up with in our head. So thank you so much for watching this video and supporting the channel. If you want to follow us on social media, the links to that can all be found in the description below. I'd love to hear how you're finding Fallout 76, what you think about builds, and what kind of content you're most excited to see on FudgeMuppet. My name is Michael, thanks again for watching, and I look forward to nerding out with you again very soon.